Well, good morning, everybody. Let's get through some of the highlights here of the upcoming forecast because there's a lot of change that's on its way. My first map, though, looks at the last 7 days of total accumulated precipitation. And while we've watched numerous areas throughout the southeast getting up toward the east coast here that have experienced a lot of flooding due to snowmelt, due to heavy rainfall, we just noticed that on this map there was a lot of moisture that was added to a big section here of the United States. Now, the Pacific Northwest, you've got a very wet next 10 days coming. Same thing for parts of California with this pattern. But as things kind of transition moving forward, what we're going to be watching here is the change in temperature and what it's going to be doing to the snowpack. Now, let me give you some information what's going on with the Mississippi River, because this morning it was nearly 12 feet above low stage. Last Friday when I talked to you, it was at 2 feet below low stage. That's what all of this moisture funneling into that river is doing. And it's also working against the longer standing subsurface soil moisture issues. We're going to continue to keep a close eye out on this area, which has been in major deficit for a while. But there's some change coming that I think is going to even make this improve as well. The change I'm expecting is going to be seen in this map. So right now, if you take all the snow that's across the United States and you melt it down and get the liquid out of it, how much is there? That's what this is showing. We call that snow water equivalent. Now, I'm not worried about the West. The West is going to continue to pick up more snow coming up. It's nothing like we saw a year ago, but it's halfway decent so far this year. So we're going to watch these snow water equivalent numbers continue to improve. But I think we're going to be melting a lot of this right in through here. We've already melted a lot that's been in New England, but I think some of this is going to be melting here in the coming days. Big difference between this year and last year. The heavy snows this year have been here. Last year they were certainly up in this area, so it's been a shift to the south as to where the heavy snow has been. Now, the temperatures are not going to stay this cold for much longer. You've got about a week of it, I think, left, where ice cold air continues to pour through this section of the country. We have 2 rounds of cold air, the one that's in place now, like you can see this morning, and one that follows it late this week. It is kind of fun to see, though, the moderating effect that the Great Lakes have had on this area. You can see Wisconsin versus Michigan. And that's one of the reasons why, given right now that the Great Lakes are almost completely ice-free, that the lake effect snow has been so epic, of course, canceling or shifting the play time here for the Buffalo Bills game. We'll watch that later today. I just wanted to point this out of how cold the air was early this morning. Wind chill warnings extend across many states here, but we're going to be watching how that cold air dives underneath warmer air rolling around a high pressure cell that's just off the coast, delivering warm air aloft, cold air at the surface, and sandwiching in between that, this massive temperature inversion. And because there's moisture in this, we have a winter storm that's been taking shape here over the last about 24 hours, and it's already spread some decent snows, and we're expecting more, and also the risk of ice farther to the south. Meanwhile, back in the Pacific Northwest, we do have the risk of ice again in the Willamette Valley. Winter storm watches have been issued here. There's a winter storm warning that's out for parts of the Four Corners states. We're going to see how this gathers into New England with this next go of it. So if we just take a look at some of the models this morning, this shading of color represents ice. This is early this morning, playing through the middle of the day. Heavier snows on the northern side of this. Lake effect coming off of the Great Lakes. But this doesn't really make it over the Blue Ridge Mountains or the Appalachian Mountains. And the reason for that is there is no low with this, okay? This is all about the nose of high pressure and cold air and the overrunning of the warmer air aloft. So we do have the risk throughout the day today. Let's just go back to this morning and play to this evening. Across the south of picking up ice, you can see it there. The snow that starts off this morning in the Mid-South moves over toward like the DC area, the Mid-Atlantic later. Lake effects going. Some light snow spreads out of Colorado today and moves across the Central Plains. You can see it there and gets over into Illinois and Indiana by tonight and tomorrow morning. Now after that, we're going to get a bit of a break. High pressure builds in. Lake effect snow stays on. Big system comes into the northwest. The system's currently just lingering off coast ready to hit. And as we get out there to the middle of this week, I'll be watching for some decent snows to finally get into one of our major snow holes in the country, which is parts of Montana. Now, if we just look at the next 10 days in aggregate, most of the country is going to get a break except for the West Coast. There's zonal flow coming in off the Pacific, so we're going to get multiple days of activity in the West. But all the wet weather you see here, this is after the 22nd into the 23rd and 24th. And much of the East Coast is going to get a bit of a break overall in the next 10 days away from the very wet conditions they've been experiencing. I'd like to show it to you quickly by comparing the GFS to the European. We've already seen this forecast here, so that's the current system rolling out, and the high pressure moves in behind it. Now what I'm talking about is this high pressure cell that is here. Now this high pressure cell normally would start to open up to a lot of warm air. It's not going to be this one, it'd be the second one that does that, because there's also high pressure battling against it coming out of the Canadian prairie ahead of this next chance for some snow. So we're going to squeeze some snow out in the middle of this. Watch. Wednesday, this is Wednesday evening, getting into Thursday and Friday. Did you see it? Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I'll show you just how much gets added up with that little stripe there. But after that, Saturday, cold air as high pressure sinks into the Midwest. Getting into Sunday, the high pressure slides east, and this is where the whole pattern begins to make a change around the 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. Do you see it? With the high pressure moving over here, it opens up the Gulf, mild air, and that green represents rain. So we're going to really see a flip around in these temperatures very soon. Let's add up the snowfall. Let's blow this up one time. There we go. Let's add up the snowfall. And let's just take it out 1 week. I like the European model solution this morning, so I'm going to leave it there. Best snows are in the Cascades, a little bit in the Sierra. I want to see this. 4+ inches maybe getting here, light fluffy stuff. Let's see it. And here's the snow coming in with the two next systems, the one today and then the one later this week, which is adding up here in parts of New England. Lake effect all week. Total rainfall over the next 7 days. This is a much, much slower pattern than what we had been seeing, and that's great. But watch this. Here's the chance over the next 7 days of getting an inch of liquid out of it. It's the west that gets hit. As we go forward, though, remember that after the 22nd into the 23rd, 24th, and 25th, do you see how the Gulf opens back up? That transports warmth. That transports high chances of getting a lot of moisture out of this. And that's an area that continues to need and needs to see more. I know I just showed you the Mississippi River up, but it needs more moisture. You look back over the last 45 days, and you can see that there's still a drier signal there. Very wet east. You combine the systems we just saw in the last 8 days, combined with the one that happened here after Christmas, wet in this area. We cannot ignore these drier spots, though. They're going to be critical to think about in the coming months. But moving forward, the jet stream by day 10 starts to retract again. After a week of extending toward the west coast, it retracts back toward Japan, and the flow splits here, and then watch this. Southwest flow comes back. Now, the significance of that is to tell you that the week 2 time period stays wetter west, but begins to open up the Gulf to moisture transport. I will be watching how far to the north we're able to get that moisture to transport, because right now the models are keeping a lot of it over parts of the south. Moving forward with temperatures, here's what the next 7 days looks like in terms of frost extent. A lot of mild air coming into the west first, but we're going to watch 2 rounds of cold air move through the center part of the country, getting almost down to Orlando with a frost. So here's your next 5 days. No surprises there, but watch day 5 through 10. Cold air builds back up into Alaska and Greenland, so mild air comes into much of the United States. It'll exit last down here in the southeast, and there's day 10 through 15. Now, if you get a chance, watch the in-depth report, the end of it, because we talk about how the pattern is open and moving because of the MJO's movement. It's not stuck in any one spot. In fact, right now it's over what we call the maritime continent. That is this area right over here. That's where our biggest storms are. And this is influencing the flow of the atmosphere, keeping the Pacific jet alive and away from big blocking episodes. But we can't get around the fact that all the longer range models want to just paint this El Nino-like picture in terms of precip, putting high pressure into this area, getting the flow to come over the top of it, drier here, drier in the Cascades, drier in the northern Rockies, while the southern tier of the United States stays quite wet in the month of February. The temperature pattern will be very volatile, just like it is in January, so expect a volatile pattern overall. Our government suggests that the end of January to the beginning of February will stay mild overall in the west, cooler east. And I would just make one adjustment. I would probably bring the wetter conditions over a broader area here than currently being forecast as we finish 1 month and start a new one. Remembering that right there, the 22nd through the 26th, this whole area is going to get a big dose of precip before this map goes into effect, okay? Bigger picture things, El Nino continues to fade. We've watched the ocean temperatures drop off in this area. And what we'll be paying attention to is the speed at which it fades. Watch the in-depth report. I discussed the difference between the models on how quickly El Nino collapses and the difference between their spring forecast. We look at the European again and the National Multi-Model Ensemble. Please take a moment to look at that. I'll just stop it here, though. From there, it's going to be about South America. After record dryness across this part of the Cerrado, getting up toward Mato Grosso, Rondonia, this record dry area in October, November, December picked up a lot of rain the first 2 weeks of the month, and also heavy rain in Argentina. On satellite, Take a look at this. Mato Grosso, Goiás, Minas Gerais have now seen their NDVI values go back above the average line. Down in Argentina, very wet to start this new month. In fact, you look back over the last 30 days, heavy rains have broken a drought there. But the concern going forward is this, and this is my last animation. We expect the next week to be dry given the MJO position, but at the end of this month, wet weather is expected to come back. And this is during harvest time period here for the first crop of soybeans. And we're going to watch what this does to the planting progress of safrinha. So I'll keep an eye on it, report to you again tomorrow from Phoenix. Until then, have a good one. Thanks.